Whispers from Below, a horror podcast by Justin W. Geis. Scary stories, both real and fake. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 8 of Whispers from Below, a podcast by a madman for madmen. I'm your resident psychopath, Justin W. Geis, and today's topic of discussion is Rapunzel. Now, for those of you that don't know, I have done two other episodes in this series of Grimm's fairy tales. I did one on the original story of Snow White, and then I did another one on the Juniper Tree, which is a much less known Grimm fairy tale story, but it's really spooky and creepy. So if you are interested in any of these like original fairy tale things, let me know, and go check out the other two episodes. I usually try to do about one of these per season, so it'll be like a series within, the big podcast series. The other thing is that this is a pretty tame episode. There's not really a whole lot that we're going to be discussing that's going to be like super traumatic or awful for anybody. I really think that this is a good episode for younger listeners. I know my last two episodes have been, I would say, relatively dark. So I wanted to kind of lighten things up with an episode that's loftier, not as heavy, And last thing before I get into the episode, if you have not already, please check out the Patreon. It is patreon.com/whispersfrombelow. It's super cool. There's a ton of cool things that you can get from it. Stickers, t-shirts, a private Discord, voting power, all sorts of cool stuff. So please go check that out if you haven't. And without further ado, let's get into the episode. So Rapunzel is originally a German fairy tale by the brothers Grimm. It was published in 1812 in Children's and Household Tales, otherwise like hyphenated to like KHM12. I'm not entirely sure what all those stand for, but as I was researching it, like a lot of times it would be shortened to that. I don't know if maybe that's like the German way that it's written or something like that, but KHM12 is the book. It was an adaptation of a fairy tale by Friedrich Schulz in 1790, and then he had adapted it from a really old fairy tale that was from like the 1600s that he had sort of adapted into a new fairy tale, and then the brothers Grimm took that and adapted that into a brand new fairy tale. As we all know, Rapunzel is an extremely popular story. It's been adapted into many different forms of medias, that I'll talk about a little bit later once we get through the original. But I mean, we all know the basic plot of Rapunzel. If you don't, maybe like the generation below me isn't as familiar, but I feel like me and up, Rapunzel. I can't say what the younger people know. But I know like I Tangled was not out yet when I was a kid, but I still knew the story of Rapunzel very, very well. I just feel like it's a really commonly told story, and it's pretty short. So now let's get into the plot. The plot starts out with a lonely couple, and all they want in the world is a child, and they live next to a walled garden. This garden has all sorts of plants, vegetables, fruits. It's a beautiful, stunning, huge garden, but it has a huge wall that kind of blocks people off from it. And the garden belongs to a sorceress. The wife starts to experience some of her pregnancy cravings, which is always a good time. And her big pregnancy craving is like salad greens, like vegetables. And she sees some quote unquote Rapunzel, in the witch, not the witch. I'm about to go full into the woods. I'm so sorry about that. The sorceress. She sees that the sorceress has some Rapunzel in her garden. Now, we don't really refer to a lot of greens today as Rapunzel. Like, that's just not in our vernacular to do that. The Rapunzel is probably referring to either Campanula rapunculus or Varianella locusta. Regardless, they're both just salad greens. They're just like lettuce or arugula. Like it's that sort of like salad greeny sort of vegetable, leafy. You know what I'm talking about. She refuses to eat anything else besides that. And because they don't have the Rapunzel, she starts to waste away. In desperation, the husband sneaks into the garden and retrieves some Rapunzel for her without getting caught. He makes a salad for her. She loves it. She's like, "Thank you so much, but now I want more." Like, this has only made the craving more intense because now I know what it tastes like and I know I want more of it. And he's like, "Fuck, I guess I'm going to go back." So he returns to the garden, but the sorceress sees him scaling the wall and catches him in the act, accuses him of stealing and all this stuff. Um, if a sorceress was to catch me, I'd probably do the same thing that he does. He just like begs for mercy. He's like, "Please don't kill me. My wife is pregnant. She's been craving these. I just had to get them. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do." Blah, 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 blah. He could have grown them himself, but whatever. Not really the time, I suppose. Um, and the sorceress agrees to be lenient. She's like, "You know what? I'll let you go, and that's fine. But one condition is that I can take the child once she's born." And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can take as much of the Rapunzel as you need to feed your wife, and she can be super happy and healthy and love her cravings. But I want the kid." Now, this is a very strange request that I don't really understand. I'm sure maybe in the story there's a little bit more of an undertone of like the sorceress really wants to like have a child but she can't, so this is her way to do it. But also like the husband just like agrees to it and the wife is like totally fine with that. Very strange set of circumstances. um so he agrees, so does the wife, I guess. She's not really asked about it, but the wife eats all the Rapunzel that she wants. She ends up having a lovely little baby girl, and the sorceress takes her to raise as her own. She names the daughter Rapunzel after her mother's pregnancy craving, and she grows up to be this beautiful, stunning child with like this long golden hair. And at the age of 12, the sorceress locks her in a tower in the middle of the woods. There are no stairs, no doors, and there's only one room and one window at the top. Very Fiona from Shrek. But we all kind of know this part of the story. She gets locked in the tower. She's got really long blonde hair, the typical. Whenever the sorceress visits her, the famous phrase happens. She says, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair that I may climb thy golden stair." Now, I didn't really know the last part of it, to be honest. I knew like "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your long hair" was like the thing that like I had heard and that like I had known. I didn't know that "I may climb that golden stair," but also like that makes sense and rhymes and like obviously I'm into it. But I feel like we all know like "Rapunzel, Rapunzel," like we all know that phrase. And it's not something that came about like later, which I thought was interesting. I assumed that that was something that was sort of put into the story later to make it more like palatable for younger children or like to make it more recognizable, but this was like in the original text. So interesting to note. One day, a prince rides into the woods, and he hears her singing. He is so enchanted; it's like a siren sound. He's so enchanted and mesmerized by this sound that he follows the noise to her tower. Obviously, he doesn't know how to gain access to it. He walks all the way around it. There's all these briar bushes. There's no door. There's no stairs. He's like, "How do I get up there?" So he would just come by every once in a while and listen to her sing. Pretty frequently, he starts to show up. And one day, while listening to her sing, he sees the sorceress enter the tower by asking "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair that I might climb the golden stair," and sees her drop her hair down. The witch, holds on, climbs up, a combination of pulling and climbing. They got all the way up to the top, and the prince decides that that's his way in. So he bids her to let her hair down. She does. They fall in love pretty quickly. And he even proposes to her, and she says yes. So that's pretty cool for her, I guess. She's like, "I'm just going to chill in this tower, and now I have a husband." So, that's kind of a big jump, I suppose. But she also doesn't really know anybody else because she's been locked in the tower. So she was probably just overzealous and whatever. And she's young. Let her do her thing. Anyway, so they plan on an escape for her. So the plan is that he's going to bring her a piece of silk every single night because the sorceress comes during the day. So if he comes at night, he can avoid the sorceress. They're never going to bump into each other. They'll never know. He's going to bring her a piece of silk that she will then construct into a ladder as she gets more and more pieces of silk. She can make a bigger ladder so that she can climb down and they can escape and run away together. Before this plan comes to fruition, she's young and she kind of slips up and gives him away. There are two different ways that this is done. So in the first edition of the story, she says that her dress is growing tighter around her waist. This sort of like hints at a pregnancy. And so the witch is like, how are you pregnant? It must be because someone's been up here. Who the fuck has been up here? And that's how that sort of gets revealed. And she innocently is like, I'm pretty sure the witch is like, well, how have you been? And she's like, well, like my dress is growing a little bit tighter around my waist. And she's like, why? And then she sort of puts it all together. In the later editions, however, she asks Dame Gothel, which is the name of the sorceress, why it's easier to pull up the prince than it is to pull up her. So not only does she slip up and be like, why is it easier to like pull up this man that I've been boning? But on top of that, she calls the witch heavy. The sorceress heavy. Like, damn. That is a bold move from like a 16-year-old girl locked in a tower. Good for her. What an icon. In anger, the sorceress cuts off all of her hair and sends her out into the wilderness to fend for herself and says like, I never want to see you again. You betrayed me. Get out of here. The prince then shows up that night with his piece of silk, and the sorceress lets him up with the severed hair. So she kept it all kind of in like one piece so that she could still bring him up into the tower. She screams at him that he will never see her again after he climbs up. He sort of meets her face to face, and he has this moment of realization of like, oh shit, something happened. She's like, you'll never see her again. And he leaps or falls, depending on the version of the story. He either like falls from the tower out of like fear, or he like jumps out of it to save his own life or whatever. Out of the tower, and he lands in a thorn bush. And although the thorn bush is super cushy, and it breaks his fall and saves his life, it scratches up his face and his eyes, and he is now blind and cannot see. Not really a good look for anybody. He ends up wandering through the countryside, these wastelands, for years, and eventually he stumbles upon the place where Rapunzel has sort of made her lodging. He hears her singing. He's like, that's her. I found her. He stumbles towards the sound, and upon their tearful reunion, the tears fall onto his face, and the tears restore his eyesight, and he gets to see his twins that she bore while she was in the woods. She had one boy and one girl, and it's sort of like a happy moment of like, oh my god, I can't believe you're blind, and then like his eyesight comes back, and he's like, twins, and they're like, yes, our children, and then they like live happily ever after and like move back to a kingdom, and she's like a princess now. I don't know about you, but I personally hate having to go to the grocery store. It takes up so much of my day when I could be starting a new hobby with that time, like soap carving or collecting the sick bags out of airplanes. With Instacart, it makes grocery shopping fast and easy, all while allowing me to stay in my underwear. Instacart allows you to order all of the things you usually get from your local stores, delivered to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Not only that, but it will also give you smart suggestions for new items based off of your preferences, as well as highlight deals to help you save some money. The shoppers handpick perfect produce and make sure that your eggs get to you safely. You can get free delivery on your first order over $35 by following the link in the show notes. This also lets Instacart know that we sent you, and it helps support Whispers from Below. So if you hate grocery shopping as much as I do, try Instacart today and enjoy getting your groceries the easy way. In some versions, the sorceress drops the hair out of the window, sort of like locking herself in the tower forever. But some versions that's never stated, some versions it's hinted at, but it's never really said. Um, take your pick. I prefer to think that, karma's a bitch if you are. So I like to think that she drops the hair out of the window and gets locked in there. Although she is a sorceress, I'm not really sure what her powers fully are. That's never really stated. But I'm pretty sure if she really wanted to get out of the tower, I'm sure she could like figure out a way to get out of the tower. She seems really creative. So, that's pretty much like the end of the story. Very short, very sweet. Nothing really like too alarming. The blinding and sort of the like initial onset of the story is what's different. Um, as we all know, again, this story is super popular. Disney made Tangled. There's a Barbie movie. She's Barbie as Rapunzel. Rapunzel makes many appearances in like Frozen, Shrek the Third, Into the Woods, which is a musical by Stephen Sondheim, features her story as sort of honestly like a subplot point. Um, there are so many. For those of you that don't know, Into the Woods, you should know it because it's really quite a wonderful musical. I grew up with it, so maybe that's why I'm partial to it. But it basically takes like Little Red Riding Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, this story, Rapunzel. There's a Cinderella's in there. All sorts of different stories kind of combine into like one big fairy tale universe. And all of their stories, they have to go into the woods and sort of adventure, and they all meet each other and help each other in their stories and become key players. And then the second act is sort of a new fairy tale with all of them together now, versus the first act is sort of all their fairy tales separately. This isn't about Into the Woods, but Rapunzel's story is featured in that sort of setting as well, with the initial onset of the father stealing and saying, I'll give up the daughter. So if you need more information about that or want to hear it told to you in song, check out Into the Woods. Always really fun. What's interesting about this story, and the reason I wanted to do an episode on it, number one, was to do something a little bit lighter because my past couple episodes have been a little dark. But also, I think that this, even though it appears to be such an innocent story, it has such a such a like wide range of like themes that it covers. It sort of covers the idea of like parents trying to protect their children from, premarital sex or the outside world. But then when the child is like, hey, I messed up, or hey, I did this thing, rather than talking about it and trying to work through it together, you sort of immediately are like, well, you're no longer my child, which I feel like is a topic that can be very triggering for people, especially in the like queer community or the LGBTQ plus community of people coming out or things like that, and parents like tossing them out on the street because they're like, you've betrayed me somehow. So I think that that's a really good sort of light way to introduce that topic to people, as well as just like overzealous parenting in general, like helicopter parenting of like, you can't see the outside world because it's dangerous. And then they're probably going to do stupider shit because they don't know anything than if you let them explore the world and sort of find their own way. Obviously, there's a balance between that. You don't want to be like neglectful, but you also want to make sure that you're not overzealous. There's a fine balance. But I think it just shows these themes in a really nice, compact way that is very palatable to a lot of different audiences. So I thought that it was really nice to see and nice to talk about. I mean, most people know this story very well. I've said it many times in this episode. 90% of our country today knows this story. I'm pretty sure everybody in Europe probably knows the story as well. Canada, it's an extremely popular fairy tale. Where I think we kind of miss the mark is that we're more focused on her than we are like the surrounding characters and like sort of how their interactions led to her. Like, she is the main character, it's named after her, but also like she doesn't really do anything in the original story. She's kind of just like reacting to things that are happening around her. And I think it's more interesting because I don't think her character would go do things because she doesn't know to go do things. It makes more sense to me. Anyway, I also like the part where he gets saved by a thorn bush, but like gets blinded and like his eyes are like bleeding and whatever. I just thought that was like really weird and like I don't know. I don't know why I was like, why would a thorn bush save your fall? Like that must have been the cushiest thorn bush in the world to only scratch up your face. Like whatever. It's not as cute of a story without the little oh, what's his name? The little, is he a chameleon? That's entangled. He's so cute. I love him so much. And the horse. They're both really great characters. Anyway. So that's sort of all the information that I have today on Rapunzel. A nice short episode, short and sweet, nothing too dark or creepy. More just like a vibe of sort of like a creepy, dark vibe to it rather than like anything that's like super gruesome or awful. Before I finish this episode, I do want to say really quickly, thank you guys for all the support that you have been shown me. We are going to be coming up on my 1-year mark of starting this podcast in February of 2021. So it's coming upon us pretty quickly, and I'm just so thankful that you guys have all stuck around with me on this journey. I know that my sort of formatting has taken some dives and dips, and I took a hiatus for a while due to some personal stuff, and you guys have stuck around with me the whole time, and I really appreciate it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in every week. Even if you don't tune in every single week, if you choose the episodes that you like and some of the ones that are too dark for you don't like, or these lighter ones, whatever, just thank you so much for tuning into any episode and consistently, downloading this content. It's really cool for me. If you haven't already, please check out the Patreon. I know I mentioned it in the beginning, but there's a $5 tier, a $10 tier, a $25 tier, a $50 tier, and a $100 tier. You can also just do like a one-time pledge of like $1. Anything, if you really want to see this show progress like I do, any sort of sharing of this or pledging on Patreon or anything like that is going to be super helpful so that I can get content out for you guys. And the more content that I can pump out and the cooler content that I can pump out, the more people are going to listen, which means that we can get more stuff in the works. I have some really cool ideas for some stuff, but I need your guys' help to get it done. So the one thing that I'm going to ask is either check out the Patreon or my website or the Instagram or anything, or just share this podcast to a friend. The biggest thing that I can ask is to get, a little bit more listens every week. And if you guys share this episode, even just by word of mouth with someone you know, and they tune in next week, that doubles the amount of people that I have listening to this, if every one of you does that. So please continue to share this podcast if you like it. The Patreon is patreon.com/whispersfrombelow. There's a link to it from my website, which is www.whispersfrombelow.com. You can download episodes there. There's a merch store there that you can buy all kinds of cool stuff from. There's also a contact page. So if you're interested in letting me know about future episode ideas, or if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always send me a form through there. It shoots right to my phone. I get to see it right away and respond to you guys. If you don't want to use the website for contacting, you can always shoot me a message on Instagram. The Instagram handle is Whispers From Below. No spaces, no underscores, no capitals, no nothing. I'm a Gen Z. My phone's pretty much always on me, so I always check the DMs. I've had a couple people message me recently with new episode ideas, and I'm getting them in the works. I'm doing some more research on them, and I'm pretty excited about these topics. So keep them coming. I love doing topics that you guys send to me. I like the stuff that I like as well, like episodes like this that are more like, I want to share something that I'm interested in, because that's how I started this podcast. But I also really love when you guys say, hey, I want to hear this from you, because a lot of times those episodes are really, really popular and they're really fun for me to do research on, because I wouldn't have thought to do that topic, So please consistently send me those things. Anytime you have an idea, I will not be bothered. Shoot me a DM, send me a message on the contact page, give me an idea for an episode. Anything like that is greatly appreciated. Also, I try to post pretty frequently on there, so there's all sorts of spooky and cool content for you to check out. If you're interested at all in my personal life, you can check out my personal Instagram, which is JUTIN_. underscore geese, like the animal. It's mostly just like makeup, pictures of my dog. I'm bald now, so I've been posting a lot of pictures that my roommate and I took of me without any hair. So there's all sorts of cool stuff to check out there. If you're interested in my personal life at all, that's probably where you'll find more information about that. Thank you guys so much for listening. And remember, Rapunzel is kind of a really bland character. Falling on a thorn bush will not save your life. Don't believe that for a goddamn second. And please wear a mask, and please be conscious of what you're doing for the holidays and stay safe first and foremost, regardless of any family obligations.